Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG. I'm here with another episode of Ask Dave. Today's question, more a comment really, comes from Johan. He says he's seen many tests of how dirty your transmitter is, mainly by cabling them to attenuators and then to a spectrum analyzer to see the harmonics. I have done so too with my NanoVNA. I have also checked my handheld antennas through antenna analyzers and so on and so forth. Now, he brings up a good point about antennas. The antenna on a handheld is a relatively narrow band device. So it is going to help attenuate bad signals. You know, if there's harmonics to radiate, it will attenuate the stuff. We need to somehow get the antenna in. Now I'm going to look over here. This is my tiny spectrum analyzer. Okay, little dinky thing. This comes from R&L Electronics, randl.com. And it's the sponsored one by the people who make this otherwise open device. Okay. Now, the way I test radios is to use the antenna. Now, this thing is not dreadfully sensitive, but we're going to try it. And I'm going to just push this up. Okay, we'll turn this thing on. Okay. And now what we are looking at is a spectrum that goes from pretty low up to here. Now I'm going to transmit, and this right here is a MERS radio. It's not a ham radio. The power is on. We're picking up other signals here. Now let me transmit, and notice we've got the antenna in here, okay? Now these are 10 dB measurements here. It's coming up to 0, and the harmonics are at about -50. That's not perfect, but it's certainly good enough to use this radio. This appears to be some spurious signal from something. Now I'm going to put this over here so we're out of the way a little ways. Okay, and we're still picking up the signal. Now I'm going to move it way over here so I'm about 1 meter away. Okay, and I'm still getting the same thing. All right, this has got quite acceptable output limits. Now, if I were to use some of the Chinese ham radios, this is Chinese radio too, you'll find that they can have pretty bad connections. I'd used this set with the antenna to test a radio once and said, don't buy this radio because the second harmonic was actually had more energy than the fundamental. So it was throwing away more energy than it was transmitting where it was supposed to be. This is a good one. These are little MERS radios from Redivus. MERS is the multi-use radio service. Most people haven't heard of it. There's only 5 channels on it. Fine, thank you very much for pointing this out. I do use a transmit through the antenna. Now, he says, well, we need to get this in an RF shielded room. I've never found RF shielded rooms to be all that shielded. How many times I've gone past a shielded room with somebody playing a radio inside. It's not supposed to be able to get through. These so-called copper shield rooms are attenuators rather than eliminators, okay? And we had that problem there with that weird transient way up high. But it is quite legit to take a radio and say, this is KE0OG testing, and then testing finished, KE0OG, something like that, okay? So, yes, you should include the effects of the antenna in what's going on. Note that to run this signal directly into here requires a considerable amount of attenuation. You know, 50, 60 dB of attenuation. You end up getting more slipping around the body of the attenuator than actually goes into it. You need a lab-grade attenuator. Most people don't have that. If you're trying to set something up, this is a fairly well-endowed spectrum analyzer. Now, I have over here, this is a Regal DSA 815 spectrum analyzer. And in fact, it will put a signal out here and look for it here so you can look at things like frequency response of coils and things like that. Or you can just put in your signal right here. This is severely limited. It says maximum minus 20 dBm. That means 10 by 10, so a milliwatt, a tenth of a milliwatt, a hundredth of a milliwatt maximum signal. So if you're going to feed directly from a radio, you need a hairy attenuator to do that. Whereas that's not true of this oscilloscope here, which can take quite a number of volts. You can plug a radio right into this and look. You can get a 50 ohm load, put this thing in here, and look at what a radio is doing. Okay? So I would use a very similar method for this as I would this. This is a low-end lab grade instrument. This right here is an amateur grade instrument. So Johan, thank you for bringing that up. The antenna is a very important part of a radio system and does in fact attenuate harmonics if the antenna is built to do that. So we've demonstrated how to test a radio using the little tiny spectrum analyzer. So there you have it. If those who are watching like this channel, how about joining? You can join right there on the YouTube page, or send me a super chat or something. Throw something in the tip jar so that we keep the channel going. And until we next meet, 73.